I'd like to call the Board of Public Works meeting of August 10th, 2016 to order. First thing is to ask if anybody is recording this other than LCAT.
Shirley Tancredi for the minutes.
Thank you, Shirley. First on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes of the July 27th, 2016 meeting.
I ask to accept those minutes.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next up is the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. I've got a few items for the board tonight. Starting off with a couple of staff updates. I think I reported at the last meeting that Enrique Rosado would be starting as a new skilled worker on August 1st. He has in fact started as we had anticipated, and I think Mr. Esposito is working to get him acclimated to the department and moving into a number of different positions, kind of rotating him around to get him exposed to what we do here. So I think so far that's going well.
Yeah, very well. He's picking everything up.
Good.
Learning everything.
Good. We also have a promotion to announce. Will Torres, who's been with us probably about 2 years now, a year and a half to 2 years, was recently promoted to the pump station operator position, which is the position that Daryl Keene had been prior to Daryl being promoted to a cross-connection inspector. He will be working and is working with Felix Vachon, our lead pump station operator, to oversee the operation of all of the town's 18 pumping stations. As a result of that, there was an opening that was then created by Will moving up to that position, a skilled worker opening, which was posted last week, and we've got a couple of applicants at this point. Expect probably to keep the applications coming in at least for the next couple of weeks, and wait until we get a good, strong candidate, and then hopefully move forward with that candidate. Just a brief update. I know everybody's aware of this, but just to speak about it for a moment, we did have the 5-day-long voluntary water restrictions that we put in effect on July 25th, and we were fortunately able to lift them on July 30th. And the reason we were able to lift them was we had very good response from the town's residents. We saw a good drop in demand over those 5 days, and that drop in demand allowed us to get our tank levels back to where they are typically. And since that time, we've been in good shape, and looking forward, I don't anticipate, can't say never, but based on everything I can see looking forward, I don't anticipate we'd have to impose voluntary restrictions again, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that was what, 10 days at 95 and above, or
Right.
around 95 degrees. So
We're getting to the backside of that curve.
yeah.
Right. I think, some residents are still irrigating. Some residents, although at this point, have given up for the season. So, once they give up, they're done. I don't think they're. You can't turn brown green very easily, not until it gets cool and damp. And just reporting, if you're interested, Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, which is where we get our drinking water supply from, they remain in very good shape from a supply standpoint. I spoke to them today, and their reservoir, the Cobble Mountain Reservoir, is still 80% full, given the lack of rainfall that we have. So they're feeling pretty comfortable that, providing this doesn't turn into a multi-year event, they're going to remain in very good shape.
Wow, I'm surprised it's that good.
You'll be glad to hear we're making some progress with National Grid regarding streetlights. They have acknowledged the need to offer a credit for the lights that we determined were actually not in place and had not been in place for some amount of time. We're discussing what time period to use for that reimbursement or that credit. They're presented a short amount of time, and we're presented a longer period of time. And
We're asking for 20 years, and they're asking for
3
months.
back to the old incandescent bulbs that used to be on there.
Yeah.
So at least, they have acknowledged the issue. They have acknowledged that they have some responsibility to try to make it right. And the question right now is coming to an agreement that we think is fair and reasonable.
Can we go all the way back to that October snowstorm or something like that far back?
We can certainly discuss that.
Yeah.
That's probably
That's probably where we lost a lot of them.
could be. Yeah. It's about the time frame that I've suggested. So, one way to look at it is that some of these lights, maybe some of them have been out for a relatively short amount of time, but probably a lot of them have been out for a long period of time. So, try to pick a point in the middle somewhere, so the average number of years the lights were out or were missing, would be what would be fair.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to work out right now. It does amount to, I believe it'd be about a $1,200 or $1,300 credit per year. So it's, you know, it's significant.
We'll take what they're gonna give us.
I did put in front of the board tonight, and this is an item that we've talked about a couple of times in the past, which is the contract extension or contract renewal with the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission for wastewater conveyance through Springfield and treatment at the Bondi's Island Treatment Facility. The way this contract is set up, it's a 6-year contract to begin when our current contract expired, and that actually expired in July 1st of 2015. Couple of things to mention is that we do pay what I think is a reasonable cost to Springfield. If you take a look at or to the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, which is a different entity than the city of Springfield. If you look at,
Does it back up and go to 2015, or does it start from the day we sign it?
it starts at 2015 and then goes 6 years beyond. So
What month?
So we're
July 1st. We're a year into,
So you're into it already?
so it would be 5 years from last month, essentially.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the costs that communities that have their own treatment facilities incur, as well as communities certainly in the greater Boston or greater Worcester area, you know, they're reasonable costs. The question is, you know, is it a fair contract? Is it a contract that treats us equitably amongst all the other communities that are served by Springfield Water and Sewer Commission? Do have to note, though, we don't really have many options available to us. You know, we've been reliant on first the city of Springfield and now Springfield Water and Sewer Commission for the last 40 years. It's unlikely that will change anytime in the near future, or, you know, ever, yeah,
Ever.
yeah. So it ultimately comes down to, is it a reasonable agreement? Are we paying a fair and reasonable price for the service that they're providing? The agreement that you have in front of you is actually pretty similar to previous agreements. Really, the one change I want to point out that they added this time, and it's significant, although not unreasonable or highly burdensome, is that we will be required, and they have these. The other thing I want to point was that every community that is served by Springfield has received a very similar contract and has already signed a very similar contract. So this is by no means anything unique that's being put forward to us. We and every other community are required to identify all the connection points to the Springfield system within 2 years of the start date of the contract, which was July of last year, which effectively would be a year from July 1st of 2017. And the reason for that is that Springfield is trying to get a better understanding of really who and what connects to their system. We know that there are some areas in town that connect to the Springfield system that aren't currently metered. Some of them are just a house here or there, some of them are a little bit larger areas. So one of the contract requirements we and everybody else has is to give them, to the best that we can, a map that identifies what gets served in the town of East Longmeadow and how those entities get served, how they get connected to the Springfield system. And then every year we're supposed to keep that map up to date. So if there's new connections added or changes made, that we need to keep them up to date on what those changes are. There is a requirement which has actually been in the last, actually I believe it's been there since the very beginning 40 years ago, that Springfield has the ability to require us to install meters on connection points that aren't currently metered. It's a requirement that they haven't imposed upon us, but it's always been in our contract, and it's been there for quite some time. They also, on these unmetered points, as part of this new contract, require us to estimate what the flows from those unmetered areas might be, because there's a contract allowance that's built in right now, where there's an estimated flow that was agreed to many years ago to account for those unmetered connections. And they, I would imagine, ultimately want to compare that allowance to what the actual flows might be.
So if we had like an area that had 20 houses, I mean, we could read those 20 water meters?
There are a number of areas we could get at. Certainly water meters would be one approach. If they have green meters, that would be more accurate, so you'd typically be, The water meter reading would likely
Yeah.
be very similar to the sewer reading. If they don't and they're irrigating heavily in the summertime, it would typically give you a higher number. So what might typically be done is you'd look at the fall and the winter quarter for those readings where irrigation would have less of a factor on what the total flows might be and project those flows. We can also then look at population, we can look at average numbers per person. There's a number of ways to try to approximate what that flow might be from a single-family house, for instance, that we don't know for certain how much water is going into the house or how much wastewater is coming out of the house. And I will note that Springfield we do have one connection that's unmetered that runs up behind Fenway Golf off of Porter Road, runs into Springfield. And a couple of months ago, there was actually
Like in the Slumber Lane area?
I'm trying to think the name in the street in Springfield. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Roy.
Forest Hills.
It maybe runs into the back of the neighborhood there.
Yeah, 4 cents.
When that connection point was built in the 1970s, there was actually a metering chamber constructed. A meter was never put in it, but the actual physical chamber was constructed. And Springfield, a couple of months ago, did put a temporary meter in that. So they're trying to come up with their own estimate of what they think those flows might be coming in from East Long Meadow. And that would be flows coming in off of the Allen Porter Street area in town. So we've talked about this a fair amount. The biggest concern that I have, and fortunately it's not a initial concern, but it's more of a long-term concern as Springfield does more long-term projects. And there's a long-term project they have in mind of a new crossing of the Connecticut River, is making certain that the way that they apportion the capital costs are fair and reasonable. And we've had a number of discussions, and we haven't come to an agreement on a system that I think is the best system. They disagree. They have another opinion regarding what the best system is. The good thing is those big capital projects won't hit during the life of this contract. They will be likely starting construction in 5 or so years. The actual financing costs don't happen until years 6 and 7 most likely. So the thing that would most concern me won't actually come into play under the life of this contract. One thing I've talked about and I've floated it by town council is that if the town was in agreement of signing this contract, that along with the signed contract, we provide Springfield with a letter that basically says we're signing this contract, but we reserve our right to renegotiate the contract terms in the future. So just because today we agree with the contract terms because they don't have the impact that we're concerned about today, we have the ability in the future when we have the opportunity to look at some of the numbers more closely and perhaps work with some of the adjoining communities.
I think that's the key right there, is work with the
Right.
Yeah.
communities in the future to make sure it's fair and reasonable to all of us.
Right. And the biggest concern really is the way it's structured right now is costs are based on average flows. And that's a reasonable approach if everybody's average flows behave similarly. But if you have a community like the city of Springfield that has very high wet weather flows because they've combined sewers, their average flow and their peak flow are different relative to each other than East Long Meadows might be or Ludlow's might be. So there may be, I think there's a rationale to take a look at how does peak versus average compare in different communities and factor that into the future agreement.
Makes sense.
I did speak with town council about the procedure now that we're operating under a different form of government, and the signatory authority under the town charter going forward for all contracts that the town executes is the town manager. What the town council suggested, town attorney suggested, is that the Board of Public Works provide a recommendation relative to this contract. And if you were to recommend positively for signature by the town manager, then the town manager would likely move forward with signing the contract, given that this body is the body that's most informed regarding the technical aspects of this contract.
And it's been approved by the town council.
That's correct, yes.
Not town
Town attorney, correct. Right. So that would be the process, and process going forward, similar to the street acceptance vote that the Board of Public Works took at the last meeting. The board would still provide its recommendation as it did to town meeting, In that case, it ultimately goes to town council that took the role of what town meeting had. In this case, it would go to town manager, who took the role of effectively the signatory, the contracting authority for the town. You know, so based on what I've explained to you, if you're supportive of signing this contract, I'd ask that you take a vote to recommend it be executed by the town.
Yep, I'll make the motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this agreement.
I'll second it.
You put the verbiage in for, just because we're signing this one, we're gonna negotiate this one in 6 years.
That'll be the cover letter that gets attached to this contract, where the town reserves its right
Yeah.
to renegotiate the terms of the contract that right now aren't a big deal, but in the future they're going to be a bigger
Got it.
deal.
Got it.
I'll second that. Any other discussion?
No other discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
Okay.
you. The next item I have covering for Dan Murphy, who's taking the night off for his wedding anniversary, is just a quick update on how the Phase 1 landfill closure project is going. I don't know if you've been out there in the last couple of weeks or not, but we did bring a small bulldozer onto site a week ago Sunday. I think we brought the dozer on, and we're working pretty heavily on putting down the cover material on the slope that drops down towards the wetland area. And if you take a look at the overall landfill area, we're probably at least 3/4 done with the overall cover material, maybe closer to 80–90%. We're making very good progress. The next phase, once we've done that, is then applying the 9 inches of topsoil material that we have to apply, and then putting down on stabilization material. We're looking at two different things, either a matting type material or a chopped fiber type material that would be sprayed on. Looking at timing of it, given the weather conditions right now, if we use the chopped fiber material, obviously you want to apply that at the right time, because you're going to be seeding at the same time, and you don't want to go and seed and then have the seed go to get
Yep.
lost because we don't have any rain for another month or two.
So this will be mowed? on
This would
regular
all be
basis?
mowed, yes. Typically twice a year.
Oh,
And what you're trying to do is keep the woody vegetation down, is really all you're trying to do.
Can we hold off on seeding it for like another month?
We could. That would be ideal, and we're kind of looking at it right now, and the longer you leave exposed areas open, the more risk you're taking of having a sudden cloud burst. So it's a catch-22. We'd like to get it done, to get it stabilized, but we also want to get the seed down when we can get the best benefit from it. One thing we can consider doing, and we did it a few weeks ago before we had the issues with the water restrictions, was we had the fire department do some training activities and come out there every couple of days and essentially serve as our temporary irrigation system if we needed to. They get additional training and practice out of it as well. So if we got to a point where we seed and we feel that we need some additional help, since we don't have any water supplies on site that we could use for irrigation.
Couldn't pull it out of the quarry?
It's a ways to go probably to do it. You'd have to run hundreds of feet of hose to get to where we would need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next phase, which is moving towards the quarry area, that'd be a little bit more feasible. This phase would be pretty difficult. So we're getting close to that point, and it looks as though that the weather conditions are getting a little bit more closer to seasonable. It's going to take a while for us to get back to normal, but we don't need normal at this point. We just need some periodic rainfall,
Yeah.
enough to keep the grass growing once we
We're
get
not
it
looking for a
seeded.
golf course,
No,
but we do want it to germinate.
right, and stay green. Yeah. So that's what I had, and then I was going to move on to Bruce Fenney's summary. Bruce is taking the night off tonight as well. It's been a busy summer for the building staff. They are starting to wind things down now in the schools. The project they worked on most recently was the library renovation project, and that is completed, will be completed at the end of this week. Country Glass, who is doing a glass wall as part of the renovation work, will be installing that this week, and everything should be wrapped up by early next week. We do have a new hot water boiler going into the Birchland Park School. That has been put on ordered, and it'll be the replacement work of that will be completed as soon as the boiler is on site. We have talked about a couple of energy efficiency projects. We're doing complete LED light changeovers at Mountain View School and Meadowbrook School. The Mountain View School is completely done, and the Meadowbrook School is about 90% complete at this point. So both of those have moved along very well. Again, with a real big push to get everything done while the kids are out of the school.
Looks like you're way ahead of there.
Yeah. And then the last energy efficiency project is that we, similarly, we're replacing the garage lighting here in the service building, and the majority of that work is done at this point. And you may want to comment, Roy, but from what I hear, everybody's very happy that, in fact, the quality and the intensity of the light is much better than what we had out there before. Moving on to playing fields, we're now getting to the point where we're getting the fields ready for the fall season. So all the fields have been lined for the upcoming fall sports. And then Bruce is scheduled with the rec department and the high school a 3 to 4 day shutdown next week, where we're going to be completely grooming the stadium field and repainting the areas of the stadium field that need to be painted. And then the school department will be hitting heavily the landscaped areas at the schools, the beds, the courtyards, the week or two before school opens.
We're done with, what, 2 applications or 3 on the fertilizer program?
I believe we're done with the third, but at this point, we're holding off any additional applications until the weather conditions change. You don't really want to come in and start applying fertilizer in conditions like this. So we're well ahead of where we had been in previous years. And if the weather conditions are more favorable, we'll get fully through the program this year.
Yeah, the irrigation we have on the fields is working very well. It's helping out.
Another item that's been keeping folks happy, both some of Roy's guys as well as Bruce's guys, are the playscapes at Meadowbrook and Mountain View schools. We did all the site preparation activity, all the excavation activity and grading, preparing for the playscape installations. And I believe that Meadowbrook is underway right now. The equipment's on site. And then Mountain View is going to be completed the week of the 22nd. Then once they're done, once the contractor's done, we'll be coming back in there and doing loaming and seeding to clean up the site before school starts. Then the last item I have is vehicles. Just one thing I did want to talk about is that truck number 2, which is the replacement vehicle for Roy's vehicle, is on order, and from what we're hearing right now is scheduled to be in late September. And the administrative vehicle is also scheduled to be in late September.
Good.
So that's all I have.
Okay. Roy?
The first thing I want to talk about is John Street Water. We were a little bit behind because of the ledge that we hit that we didn't expect, but we're through that. We've completed 1,430 feet of 8-inch main. It's all been hydro tested, bacteria tested. All 3 hydrants are alive. Completed the 5 the street connections. The one on Maple Shade, we're going to wait until the new main is put in on Maple Shade. 14 water services are completed. We still have 11 more to go. And then that job will be complete except for pulling out the old hydrants and gates, the paving and so forth. We're going to wait till the fall. We're going to throw some loom down probably now, but not do the seeding until the fall when we have better weather. Tony's done an excellent job out there. Markouts, with Tom Pope, he's all caught up. We were all caught up with markouts today, but we just got quite a few have come in. The gas company has really been really unusually busy this year with replacing gas mains and so forth.
It may be worth mentioning of 2 locations that we're all aware that the gas company is working on Maple Shade, replacing the gas main on Maple Shade and 2 of the adjoining streets. And if you want to fill in on the other streets that they're working on.
They're still working on the main on Maple Shade. The gas main's in, but they had some trouble with the connection. So when that's completed, they're doing all the services. So they're working on a Melody, and then they're gonna go right over to Fairview. When they get done with that, they might send an additional crew, because we just finished marking out a Taylor Ave, and Rankin. And then we just got another group of streets in. They're gonna be continuing on Bain, First, and Dunmore Lane. So they're really, they're doing a lot, and they're not only are they, I'm not sure about the other streets, but they're increasing the pressure from low pressure, to medium to give a better service. So that means they're replacing everything with plastic. So
Yeah, both of these came in the last week or two, fairly short notice. Fortunately, it doesn't create any sort of conflicts for any planned projects that we have, but we have pushed back pretty hard that in the future, if we know about projects in advance, sometimes we can dovetail projects that we have with work that they're doing and vice versa.
Right.
So some advanced planning can be very helpful sometimes.
Especially if they're gonna do that kind of magnitude.
Right, yeah, there's about another half mile between those two projects that they're doing.
Yeah.
yeah, they did Taylor Street maybe last year, the year before, and now they're continuing on the short street and then going into Rankin. So
So they're bringing that all up to medium duty?
I believe so,
I believe so.
which will increase the volume,
Right.
for the services. So that's keeping us, quite busy, because we have to trace all the lines and so forth. So we repaired we had a washout on the rail trail where our fiber line is, and that was completed today. So that's all set. Hydrant painting, we've done very well with hydrant painting with the summer help, and where almost all the mains had their hydrants all painted, and that includes signposts. We've had the fire department is going out and testing hydrants, and as they find something wrong, we've been repairing them. We just got some minor repairs still to go, but we're up to date on that.
Are we doing, I know in the past the policy was we provided somebody and they provide somebody, it was like a two-man crew, so each
No, we
department
don't,
was...
I believe they're just going out to make sure that they work. They're not, I don't think they're doing any flow testing.
Right.
They're just making sure the caps come off and the operating
Okay,
networks.
all right, okay, because I know in the past we
Right.
worked together, so
Yeah,
each
yeah.
department knew what was going on.
Yeah, I don't think they're
Okay.
flowing any hydrants.
Okay.
The chief and I have talked about that concept, about doing it. We haven't got to a point where it's worked for getting both of our schedules together, but
Right.
But if that was to happen, we
Okay,
would.
so they're not flow testing,
No.
they're just...
They're just making sure the caps are removable, the operating nut, there's not a lot of brush around. So if there was a fire, they'd be able to get at it.
Okay.
they're trying to get down streets they haven't been down in a long time, areas that they haven't had fires, so they know that they haven't had any activities. So there's, some of these hydrants, there were some hydrants they opened off of one of the subdivisions off of Allen Street that probably hadn't been opened in 15 years, and showed the signs of that when they tried to open them.
Yeah, every year we flush all the water mains, so we're only using hydrants at the end of the street. We don't flush every hydrant. So if they're not being used, who knows when the last time they were used, so they're going around and testing those out.
This was actually, on what it's worth, on an unaccepted street off of Allen Street. For that reason, that's a street that we would typically, from a public safety standpoint, we obviously want those hydrants working and available to the fire department, but it's a street that's not accepted, so we don't do any ordinary, activities other than street plowing and things like that.
So continuing, Steve is keeping up on the potholes and paving. That's all under control. He's repairing catch basins, street sweeping. We're trying to get caught up on that, and we're in catch basin cleaning with our catch basin cleaner. Steve and his crew did a very good job preparing for the playgrounds that went in. When they arrived, they decided it wasn't excavated enough, so we had to send the guys back out. They wanted a little bit more, so that went well. On the trees, we're waiting for some rainy days to do some more tree work. We had a rainy day the other day, and we were able to get some tree work done, but we haven't had too much of that lately. We did some painting of crosswalks the other day. We're trying to get around all the schools, so all that's all set, and all the stencils are done, and of course Daryl's moving like right along over at the transfer station, as was already mentioned. As far as a future, we're going to continue with the water services on John Street, and then of the paving, and then the looming. We're trying to get some culvert cleaning done if it ever dries up enough. It seems like even though it's been dry out, the culverts have still been running, which is unusual. We're going to do some more pavement markings, like later this month, and then we're going to we have some manhole repairs to do and some catch basins still to be repaired. So that's all I have for now.
Good.
Sounds
You guys are busy. All right. Any other business?
That's all I had.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
We're gonna schedule the next meeting for Wednesday, August 31st, 5 o'clock at the service building.
Sounds good.
Motion to adjourn?
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.